So we'll get straight into it, and very welcome to everyone here tonight. So Siobhan, my first question, can you tell us all a little bit more around the background to this webinar and how it all came about?
Okay, so we're very aware that parents and carers are quite anxious at the moment in relation to how their child is going to cope with returning back to school. Parents have been under a huge amount of pressure over the last number of months. They've been trying to homeschool, juggle their own jobs as well as childcare. Some have had, illnesses and death in the family as well as, caring after sick family members. So from listening to the parents that we work with within our therapeutic services, some of the things that were coming up for them was in relation to that they'd like some help and support around the attachment issue of when the child goes back to school after being at home for the 6 months. Also, support around routines in the home, around bedtime and around screen time, as these have kind of gone out the window over the last number of months with everything that's been going on. And also the feeling that their child and themselves will be under a lot of pressure having to go back to school and having missed out on so much time there. From our Childline listening service, as Edel spoke about there just a few moments ago, with our phone or text or online service, children have contacted us in the last number of weeks in relation to school and in relation to their education, and feeling isolated and feeling bored and feeling worried about going back to school. So we felt it was really something that it's really important to be able to support parents during this time. And I suppose one thing that I'd just like to say as well, that it's important to acknowledge that not only is this a change in your own child's life with returning back to school during COVID, it's also a change for you as a parent. And we know here that in the ISPCC, when a parent feels relaxed, calm and supported, this has a ripple down effect on their child.
Yeah, that's so true. And I have to say I really relate to on a professional level, but on a personal level, the whole during COVID, juggling childcare and work and maybe looking after older parents. I can definitely relate to that. So Siobhan, children and families in Ireland have had to cope with a lot of changes in their life. So what would you say to parents and carers here tonight about helping their child cope with change?
Okay, so it's nearly 6 months now since the schools closed and children have been at home. And during that time, they're going to have had a lot of positive experiences and a lot of negative experiences. And again, listening to the children that we work with, the positive experiences that they had is they've learned lots of new skills. There's been lots of new learning that they possibly wouldn't have had in the classroom, but have been given the opportunity at home. Some kids, the baking, the gardening. They've also said to us about slower pace of life. Things aren't as hectic. They're not running, to lots of different places. They've improved relationships at home with their mum and dad and siblings, and also the upskilling of the use of technology to stay connected with people in their lives as well. And sometimes they're actually been in contact more with people and family members than they would have been pre-COVID. Some of the negative experience children have talked to us about are in relation to missing their friends, missing school and their teachers. Also, there might have been a loss of job in the family home as well. Stability and routine might not be as present as it was. Also, bereavement and loss. And then on the flip side of that, also the increase of pressure in relationships. So maybe not getting on as well with parents or with siblings. And sometimes then not having the access to supports that they would have had prior to COVID as well. So we know a child is going to carry both these positive and negative experiences with them as they return back to school, as well as their own worries that they have in relation to school. So what we can do as parents to support them with this change is to help them develop coping skills. Change is something that happens to everybody at some point in their life. And at the moment, the change that we're all looking at is returning to school in the next number of months during COVID and during lots of different restrictions. In 6 months' time or in a year's time, that change might be something different. It might be that the children are going into experiencing puberty. It might be that they have an ill relative that comes to live with them and mum and dad has to care for them as well as the family. It could be that they've been the youngest sibling for a number of years and a new baby is about to arrive in the family. So I suppose the point that I'm trying to make is change happens. And what's really important is that we equip our child with dealing with change, give them the coping skills that when change occurs, they can deal with it in a positive way. It's about really strengthening their resilience.
Okay, and we're hearing a lot about resilience. Can you just tell us a little bit more about what it is?
Okay, resilience is a word that seems to be out there a lot at the minute. And what resilience means is the ability to cope back or bounce back from a difficult situation. So while as parents we really want to protect our children from any negative experiences, this just isn't the case. And the prime example at the moment is COVID. We couldn't protect our children from this. We couldn't stop schools from closing. It's also maybe the death of a loved one. You know, it might be the fallout with a friend. Lots of negative experiences we don't want them to have, but it's part of life and growing up. So when your child might experience these situations, they might be feeling a bit more stressed, they might be a bit more anxious, withdrawn, or angry. And it's okay to feel like this, but it's being resilient means finding the ways for them to be able to manage and control those feelings. And what's really important is how we as parents support our children to deal with such experiences. And the good thing is that you can help strengthen your child's resilience. There's no right or wrong, or we have it or we haven't got it. It's about strengthening it and building on it. In the ISPCC, we look at the resilience in terms of three things. It's the I am, I can, I have, and it's the Edith Grotbergs model of resilience. So the I am focus very much on a child's social self-esteem, their self-confidence. So what are they good at? What are their talents? What are the positive qualities? Can they say, I am a good person? I am good at horse riding. I am able to do nice things for other people. So it's their sense of self. It's their ability to recognize that in themselves. The I can looks at how they regulate their feelings and their emotions. So what can I do to make myself better to manage this? You know, I can talk to others when I'm worried about things. I can find somebody to help me when I need it. I can solve a problem. And then the I have is arrange their social supports. So it's their social network. Who do they have in their lives that they can go to when they need to talk to somebody? So I have people in my life who I trust and care about me. I have someone to go to when I'm sick or in trouble. It's about your child recognizing these about themselves and supporting and encouraging them with these statements. Now, a child doesn't need to have all three of these statements. Where they have one or two, that's fantastic. The good thing about dealing with challenges and change in this way is that it can really help your child find ways to bounce back.
Okay, and you know, Siobhan, thanks for sharing the model that we have adapted in the ISPCC, I am, I can, I have. But for mums and dads and teachers who are tuning in here tonight, can you give us some practical examples of how they can implement this?
Okay, yeah, so some of the things that you can do to strengthen your child's resilience will be, if we take looking at the I am, which is very much around the self-esteem and confidence building, it's around encouraging your child to do things for themselves. Now, saying that, I know at times it's a lot easier sometimes if you do it yourself and things get done a lot quicker. But by getting them to do things for themselves, builds their confidence and builds their independence. It could be a case of now your child is going back to school. It's giving them that little bit more responsibility. So it's a case of maybe they're getting their lunchbox ready for the morning. They're preparing their lunch. It might be the night before they're getting their uniform ready. All these things are really good to do with your child as well, because it's also preparing them for going back to school. Help your child identify the things that they're good at, their talents, and encourage them and support them with this. So if you see that your child is helping around the house and helping you maybe put away the washing or tidying up the toys that they've been playing with, or with their brother or sister's toys, recognize that and say to them that you see that they're really good and they're really helpful at home. And bring that back into how they can use that in the classroom. So when they return back to school in the next couple of weeks, you know, I know you're really good at home at helping and tidying up. That's going to be great when you're back in school, and you'll be able to help out the teacher and your other friends in school as well. Another thing that's really important is praising and encouraging your child. And you know, these are things that you're probably doing the whole time and every day. It's just really reminding us of how much they actually mean and how much they really do strengthen our child's resilience. So it's about noticing when your child is trying to change maybe a negative behavior or trying to do something. We don't always have to necessarily wait for them to complete the task. So like that, it might be a child who might be having difficulty with maybe learning how to, tie their shoelaces or fully get themselves dressed and clothed for going to school. But notice as they're doing it that they're, half dressed, but they're totally distracted by their toys that they want to go play with. Let them know how well they're doing, that they're getting there, and you can see that they're really making an effort. It's about highlighting the positives to our child. So if they haven't done something that they were meant to do, sometimes we can be very guilty of pointing out the negatives first and starting off with the negative side of things rather than the positive. I worked with a mum once, and we were talking about her son, and she was having a lot of difficulty with getting him off his Xbox and not listening to her and being quite angry and quite aggressive. And as she was speaking about it, and then she went on to talk about, well, in the last couple of days, he has come off it when I've asked him. I haven't had to ask him as much. And I asked her just to stop and actually just repeat exactly what she said and flip it round and start with how she ended. How she ended was positive. She noticed the change that her son had made. So it's about identifying this in your child. Sometimes we can jump into the negative straight away rather than seeing what it is that they're doing well. And think of it as ourselves, as parents. If someone tells us something that we haven't done well, right, initially at first, we kind of might get defensive and kind of go, okay. But if they start with something positive and tell us how well you've done, or thank you so much for this, your response is it's a lot better. And it's the same for our kids as well. It's just about recognizing those positives. Another one, from the families that we work with would very much be like they might have speak about, routines in the house that you have, and it might be coming home from school. The routine is to change out of your uniform, put away your lunchbox, get your snack, and sit down and do your homework. And we come down and we can see the child sitting at the table doing the homework, everything done, but all we can see is the school uniform is still on. Rather than jumping to, why don't you have your school uniform off you? Focus on what they have done and give them the praise in relation to that. Again, this is all building the child's confidence, their self-esteem, the things that they can do. It's really making them feel valued that way. When we're praising and encouraging our children, it's really important that it's clear and specific, so that you're giving your child the full attention when you're encouraging them. And you're specific about what it is that you're praising them on. So if we turn around and go, oh, you've been really good today, well done. That could mean absolutely anything, because they could have done really well. They might have helped you with the shopping. But then they could have also turned around and thrown a few toys at their brother or sister, or gave them a punch. So it's about being very clear on what it is that they have done that's specific. So it could be a case of, okay, thank you so much. You did really, really well today. You walked your sister into school down the yard and held her hand, which was really, really good. And then just kind of moving that on, it's about making that praise personal to you. So it might be a case of saying, oh, you did really well. You walked your sister in, you held her hand when she was upset going into school, because I couldn't do that right at the moment because I can't go into the school. So that meant an awful lot to me. And obviously with the restrictions with COVID, we're not able to go into the schools. So that's something that, will really build up your child's confidence in themselves that way as well. Another one that's really good is giving them the double encouragement and praise. And what this is where it's you're giving your child praise in front of other people. And they really, really love this, being praised in front of others. This could be another parent, it might be a teacher, it might be a neighbour or a grandmother. And sometimes it doesn't have to be right in front of them. They don't physically have to be there beside you. It might be that you're on the phone and your child can hear you talking to granny about how well they did, helping you out in that as well. As parents, we're our children's biggest role model, and we have to be really mindful of how we address ourselves. Sometimes we forget about it, and it might be a case of we turn around and we forget to do something like, I forgot to put out the bins today. I'm going to miss the bin truck. I'm so stupid, I didn't do it. If your child is around and they're listening to you while you're saying that, the next time they do something that they forget to do, they might associate themselves as being stupid because they hear you saying that you're stupid. So it's just being a little bit mindful of how we address ourselves and be nicer to ourselves. It's about encouraging helpfulness. And this really then kind of falls under as well the I can So it's really getting them to, to regulate their feelings and emotions and be in control of what they can do. So it's again giving maybe everybody in the house a chore or a job. And it doesn't matter what age they are, everybody can have something. It'll make your child feel really good about themselves, and it'll promote positive feelings that they are important. I worked with a mum once and we were talking about this, and she looked at me and she said, really, everyone a chore in the house. And she had 3 or 4 children from the age of a year and a half up to 19. And she spoke about how she never ever gave her child chores to do. She didn't feel like she should do that. So we chatted about that and what that meant. And she came to the own realization that actually what she was teaching her kids was that she does everything for them. And she realized actually she wasn't giving them the independent skills that they need to be able to grow up and be confident in their ability to do things. So it's really important to create that independence in your children. And especially with them going back to school. And again, when we talk about they've been at home for 6 months, a lot of parents and children have the worries of that attachment of being together for so long. It's really important that we can give them those independent skills, that they can cope when we're not around. It's about helping them deal with their emotions as well. So it's helping your child. You're encouraging them to talk about how they're feeling. So by doing this regularly, it becomes easier for a child to open up and talk about things. And it's a really healthy habit for a family to get into. So even now, a couple of weeks before school, it's about maybe making that time to chat just about your day, about your friends. And then when they return to school, it makes it more easier for them to come to you if they have something on their mind, if there's something happening at school that they like or they don't like. So it's just opening up that mode of communication with them. Some children might find it difficult to actually verbalize what they're feeling. And what we can do is we can help them with that by simply focusing on maybe just 4 simple emotions of happy, sad, angry, or afraid. So it's about try using these emotions to reflect on what their feelings are. Sometimes children don't actually know how they're feeling, and they might need you to name that feeling for them and help them to understand why they're doing that. And some children are great. They mightn't be able to verbalize it, but they can be quite creative, and they can write things down in diaries or draw pictures, while others are very happy to speak. You'll know your child the best and how to relate to them.
Thanks, Siobhan. That's very helpful. And I like you ended there just saying, breaking it down to the 4 simple emotions: happy, sad, afraid, angry. And I know for us in the ISPCC, with very young children, with I've done this with 4, 5, 6 and 7-year-olds, it just helps them give them that language to express themselves. So thanks for that. So moving on, it's been nearly 6 months since children have been out of the classroom, and they're now getting ready to return to school, and they may have lots of different feelings about going back. Can you tell us a little bit more about communicating with your child and listening to them to help them manage this transition back?
Yeah, so it's really important that as parents we engage with our children around these feelings, that we give them the space, the time and the opportunity to talk and to help empower them with the skills to cope. They need our support to understand everything that's happened with COVID-19, with the closing of schools and creches and childcare, and now they're all reopening again. To do this, we would use, and think it's quite important, is the active listening skills and communicating clearly to understand your child's thoughts, and also to help any misunderstandings that they might have around different things that's going on. It's really important, however, that we don't overload our child with too much information, and that it's age appropriate. And it's also important that we give them factual information from trusted sources. And it's really important to remember that, at the moment there's rumors and speculation about what's going to happen, or the what ifs of school and what's it going to be like, and if they open up, and if we have COVID, and if there's cases, and what way it's going to be. We just need to be mindful of where we're getting that information and how we're portraying that to our child. Again, it's really going back to the key of helping them to learn how to cope with change.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, that, we as parents have to rely on the trusted sources rather than, as you said, there's a lot of misinformation and rumors and myths, and we can get caught up in that. So I think it's important as parents to just stick to the facts. just going back to there, you mentioned active listening skills, and I wondered, could you just talk a little bit further about that, and could you give the audience any key tips around active listening?
So yeah, so active listening is something that we would use a lot within the work that we do within Childline Therapeutic and Childline Listening. It's an important skill at all ages, and it role models positive pro-social behaviour to your child, and it teaches them to give and receive respect in the home, in school, and their communities. I suppose tips that you can do to demonstrate active listening are, the first one would be for yourself, would be to stop, think, and act. And this is something that we do with the kids that we work with. It's like the traffic light system, the red is the stop, the orange is think, what are my options, what can I do? And then green is the move forward. So when your child comes to you and wants to talk to you about something, are you able to listen to them and really listen to them? And if you are, fantastic, you can have that time with them. But a lot of the time, we're all living in busy houses. We're all managing a household, other children, housework, homework, and trying to work as well. So it's about going to your child. If you have a child that comes in from school and you can see they want to chat to you about something, they say, I really want to talk to you about what happened today in class. But you're sitting there trying to get the dinner on, and you've got a toddler running around your feet, and you've got a load of washing in the washing machine since 9 o'clock this morning that you realised actually I haven't taken out. You're actually not going to be able to give your child the time and attention that they need right now. And it's okay. That's okay to do. And just let your child know that what they have to say is really, really important. But right now is not the time to talk about it, that you are doing quite a lot at the minute. But that after dinner, when it's tidied up and everywhere is clean, we'll sit down and we can have a chat together. The important thing is going back to your child after dinner and go back to them when you said that you were going to do, and let them know you're there for them. Now, this doesn't always work as smoothly. Your child might turn around and say, I'm actually after forgetting what it was about. And you can go, that's okay, that's no problem. When you remember, or if you want to talk about it, I'm here to listen. Your child also might turn around and say, just because you're ready to listen to me now doesn't mean I'm going to talk to you. And they might feel like they don't want to talk to you right now. Again, it's just reminding them, that's okay. I'm really sorry I wasn't there earlier on, but I had lots to do. And if I was listening to you, I actually wouldn't have been, because I would have been doing the dinner and taking out the washing. By going back to your child and them seeing it each time, you're building up the trust. I worked with a mum of a 10-year-old girl, and she told me this was something that happened quite a lot for her, that she wasn't able to listen to her child. She'd always say, I'll go back to you. But she never actually went back to her child to ask her what it was that she wanted to talk about. She just presumed, because her child never brought it up again, that actually it was okay and it wasn't such a big deal. When she actually started going back to her child, she reported such a change in her daughter. The reason why she was working with us was she felt her daughter was really withdrawn and not talking about what was going on for her feelings. She wouldn't open up about anything. As soon as she went back to her, when she said she would, her child started opening up, her child started talking, and she could see a huge change. So it's just so important to, keep doing it. That you might keep getting, I don't want to talk about it now, but once they see that you mean it, it builds that trust back up that you're there for them. And when they see that, it'll make it easier for them to come and talk to you. And especially with going back to school, they mightn't want to talk right now about the worries that they might have, or things, the anxieties that they have. But if we open up the lines of communication right now, in 2 or 3 weeks' time, they can see that you're there and you're ready to listen. It might make it more easier for them. It means that you're also, you're hearing what your child has to say through your open body language. You're nodding, you're asking clarifying questions. And you might just summarize what they said at the very end so they can see that you've actually heard what they've said to you. Listening also means hearing what your child has to say without fidgeting or taking the washing out of the washing machine, or, being on your mobile phone. If you think as yourself, as a parent, as an adult, when you went to talk to somebody, maybe when you had a worry on your mind, or you just wanted to share how you were feeling, and they weren't really responsive to you, they were on their mobile phone, or they were looking out the window, not paying attention, you're reluctant to go back and talk to them. So it's the same for our kids, just putting us in their shoes and what it's like for them. Sometimes children don't want us to solve their problems. They just want the time for us to express how they feel. And when they can do that, it gives them a sense of relief, and it helps them maybe problem solve themselves. So it doesn't mean that we necessarily need advice from us. It just gives them a space to actually be able to talk about what's going on for them.
Very good. And I know up on the screen now we have keys to good listening that I know all staff and all volunteers in the ISPCC would be really focused on these keys. Can you talk us through each one of them, Siobhan?
Yeah, so I'll quickly just kind of go through some of these. And again, like everything, these are things that we're probably using every day in our everyday life. It's just about bringing them back into the reminder of how we can use them, how it can really help our children right now as well. So it's about limiting your own talking, which basically is, you can't talk and listen to your child at the same time. So let them talk. When you're exploring with them, how are they feeling about going back to school? What is it they're looking forward to? What is it they're not looking forward to? Let them talk about it, and don't jump in and say what you think it is that they're going to say. Think like your child. So your child's problems and needs are important, and you'll understand something and retain it better if you keep his or her point of view in mind at all times. Asking for clarification is also really important. If you don't understand something or feel you might have missed a point, clear it up by asking. So it could be a case if your child comes home from school and talks to you about how their best friend has been picked on and been bullied in school that day. So it's about just going, okay, so can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean when you say X is bullying, is being bullied? So you can understand what it is that they mean and what's actually going on. It's about not interrupting them as well. So it's like letting them have the space to talk. Some children might take a pause or they might stop. It doesn't always mean that they've finished what they're saying, what they want to say. And this is something I actually found quite hard when I first started working with the ISPCC and when I was taking calls on Childline, was that having to wait for that silence. I felt like I had to fill it. I'd have to jump in. It was uncomfortable. But sometimes it's the most powerful thing you can do is just give them that space. Sometimes they're just not ready to say it fully or they're trying to get it out. It's about concentration as well. So it's about focusing your mind on what they're saying. So practice shutting out outside distractions. So the washing machine and all the washing that needs to be taken out. Forget about them. Just be there and listen to your child. Listen for the feelings as well as the facts. So you want to get the whole picture and not just isolated bits and pieces. And you'll get that as well from watching your child and watching their body language and how they're reacting to you and when they're talking. And it's also really good then to kind of let them know that you are listening to them by interjecting every so often, going, or yes, and just acknowledging that you are there and that you're still present with them. It's about not jumping to conclusions. So avoid making unwarranted assumptions of what your child is going to say and then maybe finishing the sentences for them. Let them say what it is that they have to say. And then listen for overtones. So you can learn a great deal about your child from the way they say something, the way they react, and the way they say things. And again, looking out for that body language. They might be saying to you that they're really happy while their face looks really, really sad and really, really down.
Very good. Okay, thanks for that, Siobhan. I think it's my turn now. I think the spotlight is on me now, but thanks so much for all of that. So important. Okay. Lots of really valuable hints and tips.
Okay, thanks. And I think the main things that we're looking at is really around looking at the coping skills that we can equip our child with. It really is strengthening their resilience. Change happens at different times of our life, and it's about looking at how we can cope with that as well, and how we as parents can help them through it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I suppose, as Adele said earlier, we get a huge variety in the different challenges that children come to the ISPCC. So if I'm working a 10-year-old now and the challenge is, let's say, bullying or parental separation, I want them to have a toolkit that they can use in 5 years' time or 3 years' time if something else happens down the line. You positive, healthy habits and things that support their well-being as well.
Exactly. Okay, so Sinead, within the ISPCC, we highlight the positive benefits of children being able to seek support. It can boost a child's confidence in finding ways to cope with difficulties. Can you talk through and maybe give us some practical tools for parents to encourage and support this?
Yeah, as you say, Siobhan, it would be very important for us on the front line with children, um, to make sure that they're aware of who is there for me if I need them. And I think as parents are now focused on going back to school and helping their child ease into the transition, one simple creative task that parents can do with their child is my helping hand. And we have just a screenshot there of an example of a helping hand. So all you need is a piece of paper and a few colours. So you're getting your child to trace out their hand, and you are getting them to identify 5 trusted adults that they could go to if they had something on their mind. So, if we think about going back to school, they could even identify some trusted adults in the school environment. So it could be their SNA, their class teacher, the resource teacher, and then maybe someone from their family or extended family. So in this example, we've put down my mum or my granddad. And you might say to me, oh, but your mum and granddad aren't at school with the child. But what children tell me in my day-to-day work is that sometimes even remembering who is there for me, who loves me, who cares for me, who can I chat to at 2:30 when I go home from school, can be a huge support to them. So what I often say to parents with this one is, when you make it, get the child to think about where they're going to display it in the house. So some children I've worked with put it by their bed, and they said it's a lovely reminder just to look at it and remember the people they can go to if they need support in their life. Others put it up on the fridge in the kitchen. What you could probably do is laminate it and give them a copy for their pencil case or for their pocket going into school, or for inside in their homework diary, so that they can just have a quick look during the day if they ever need to. So this kind of breaks down the stigma and taboo around asking for help and seeking help. But one thing that I find, especially with younger children, is that they can very easily identify who they can go to. But sometimes they need us and they need their parents to help them think about, what would I say if I went to my teacher? What would I say if I went to my resource teacher? So what I say to parents is maybe just do a bit of a role play with your child. So you could role play the teacher, they can be themselves, and you can think of a scenario where they need a bit extra support, and just brainstorm what phrase or what words could they use to access that support. And one tip I would say to parents is the children really love flipping it around. So you be the child, you pretend to be a young person, and they be the class teacher, and just get them to practice and build their confidence in reaching out for support. Now, for anyone listening here tonight who have teenagers, they obviously would find this babyish to do my helping hand, but the principle is the same. You want your teenager to know it's okay to ask for support when you need it. So most teenagers I've worked with don't like that intensive face-to-face eye contact scenario. So we would always say to parents, have a chat in the car, have a chat with your teenager while you're doing an activity where you're unloading the shopping or out in the garden doing some tasks, and just explore with them, going back to school, who would they go to if they'd something on their mind, and just have that open dialogue with them. Another thing I would say to parents is that we as the adults need to be leading by example. So we need to show our children that we sometimes need support, and that's okay. So you can give them some child appropriate examples. So for example, you could be under pressure with a project at work, and you could say, do you know what, I phoned my manager and someone else is going to help me with work, help me with my workload, or I rang granny and she's going to help me out with something, or whatever it is. Another thing I would say to parents is, it's good to share with your child appropriate examples of when you were their age, of scenarios where you needed to seek support and access support. So sometimes I think children think of us just as adults. They can't sometimes visualize us as children. So it's really good to share those experiences with them.
Great, thanks, Sinead. I really love that idea of the helping hand, and I know that's something that we might do a little bit more about tomorrow evening in tomorrow night's webinar with the children as well. And yeah, the role plays are always great. Kids tend to love them, adults maybe not so much, but anyway, they get a lot from them.
Yeah.
Okay, so children are getting ready to return to school. How, as parents, can we best support their child to cope with the potential future changes.
Yeah. So look, at the moment in Ireland, there is a lot of anxiety. And anxiety really is the fear of the unknown. But we need to think more about the resilience, as you say, so that children can face manageable threats with you as their parent by their side. So the following tips are hopefully a bit of advice that will help navigate these changes. The first one is something I always try to use with my clients, is to control the controllables. Unfortunately, in life, we have to accept that we can't 100% control every single aspect of our lives. It is a difficult life lesson that some young children are learning at the moment in Ireland, and we need to acknowledge their emotions around it. It's so understandable for children to have strong feelings around this. But I think we need to remind children that they're not alone, that their classmates will be feeling some similar feelings. And also just remind them, 1 billion children's education in the world has been impacted by COVID. And I think it's also important to remind them there are some small steps they can do to try and help gain a little bit of control around it. And that would be, the healthy hygiene and cough and sneezing etiquette. But also it's to remind them what's going to stay the same. There's all these changes happening, but what is the same? So you are going to be there for them. You are going to listen to them every evening after school if they need to chat. You are going to be consistently in their life and that you love them. And also, I suppose, something that's going to be consistent is in whatever shape or form, and we know the government are doing everything they can to get children back in the classroom, but we know that children will still have to be doing some of the same subjects, so their English and our Irish. So there's lots of things will stay the same. The next point there is living in 24-hour compartments. So this is a good trick in terms of people who are experiencing anxiety, whether you as a parent are or your child, that sometimes we can race ahead. So we're thinking ahead 2 weeks' time, 3 weeks' time. We're thinking ahead to what's going to happen in October, Christmas. And some of that is inevitable and we do have to plan ahead. But I think for children especially, it's about trying to bring them back to the here and now. So trying to bring them back to this day, this activity, this game that we're playing, this dinner, whatever it is. The next point there is having a solution-focused approach. So what we would do with many of our clients in the ISPCC, and we'll be doing this in much more detail tomorrow night, so we hope to see many of our parents come tomorrow night with your child. We'll go into this in a lot more detail, but just to give you an overview, what you could do with your child is you could draw a ladder, and on that ladder there's 10 steps, 1 to 10. At the 10th step, you can have a lovely happy face, and at step number 1 on the bottom, a sad face. So you could ask your child, how are you feeling about going back to school? Where are you on this scale? So let's say they say, I'm at a 4. In your mind, you might be thinking, oh God, they're not at a 7 or an 8, they're at a 4. But the solution focus approach would look at, okay, you're not at a 4, but you're not at a 3 or 2. What has helped you get to a 4? Explore with them what has helped them up to a 4. Then you would ask them, where would you like to be? And it's very rare in the 12, 13 years I've been here, I've never, maybe once I've met a child who says, oh, I want to be at a 10. Most children will tell you, oh, I want to be in an 8, I want to be at a 9. So they will pick where they'd like to be, and you have a baseline of where they are now. So let's say they are 4, and you can ask them, okay, what's going to help you move up? Is there anything I can do as your mom or dad to help you? Do you have any ideas? And try to elicit from them anything that they will find is helpful. And add on to that is what we call the miracle question. So you could say to your child, okay, you're going to go to bed tonight, and while you're sleeping, a miracle happens, which means you wake up in the morning and you're feeling an 8. You're feeling happy about going back to school. You're feeling relaxed. You're feeling confident. And then you get them to talk through their day. What would it look like? So visualization is a really powerful tool for children, and they're so good at using their imagination. And it just shifts the mind into a more positive frame. So you get them to detail their day. So who's the first person they normally see? Say it's you at breakfast time. You would ask the child, well, how would you know, how would your mum know, or how would your brother know something's different? What would you be doing differently? What would you be doing differently on the way to school in the car? And often children have told me, oh, I'd be way more chattier in the car. I'd be looking forward to school. I might be telling a joke. I wouldn't, be listening to my music and ignoring everyone. I'd be participating more. So that miracle question can be a real benefit. I always say to parents, you can keep track of this over the coming weeks. Keep it in an open place where you can review it and monitor it. And don't worry if a child slips back a little bit. Let's say they're at 5 and they slip back to 4. Just break it down to baby steps. What's going to move you back to 4.5? Keep it small, keep it simple, and keep it positive. The final thing here we have is hope, gratitude, and optimism. So the hope and optimism we know around the research around resilience is that when we are hopeful and optimistic about the future, that has a real benefit to children. And I think it's important for our children to see us and hear us being hopeful. It's important for them to see us enjoying life and having fun. I know there's a lot going on at the moment, but I think it's really good for them to see that. And then finally, gratitude. I heard from a mum recently who said she had a 7-year-old child who was really anxious with the whole COVID situation, and she said she needed to change tactics. She said bedtime, particularly, the child became really, really anxious and really worried. So what this mum decided to do was, at the family meal, which was at about 5 o'clock every evening, she decided to set up a new habit in the family where everyone around the table had to say 2 things that they were grateful for that day. So it could be, I don't know, I got to watch my favorite cartoon, or I don't know, I had my favorite dinner, which was pizza for my dinner. It could be just small things. And she said, getting everyone to do it and getting this child in particular to do it really changed the bedtime routine and put the family in a more positive frame of mind going into that bedtime routine.
Okay, great, Sinead. Thank you so much. There's a huge amount of tips there and of activities that the parents can do to support their child. I really liked the controllables when you're talking about that, and that a lot of things will still be the same. While other things will be quite different. And it kind of goes back to the point that I made earlier on in relation to, don't jump to the negatives of, the what ifs and what's not going to happen. Look at the positives of what is the same and what will be there. They've gone back into their school, they'll still be doing their English, their Irish, who their friends are going to be, it'll still be the same yard that they're walking through and that. So, so I found that really, really good. So obviously, children are about to return to school. We've spoken about communicating with your child. Can you tell us the importance of communicating with your child's school, and maybe give us any advice around parents can do this or what they should be doing right now?
Yeah, so we know that when a child sees their parent and their school and all the stakeholders communicating really clearly, it puts them at ease. It creates trust and it makes them feel really safe and secure. And we also know there's huge research to back up that when there's positive relationship between home and school, it really helps settle a child into school. What I would say to parents is don't be afraid to share your feelings with school, especially if you have a particular concern around your child. I was talking to a principal of a large primary school the last few weeks, and he was saying, Sinead, we love to hear from parents before school actually starts. And he was saying, particularly with COVID and all the changes, we are open to hearing from parents. They can talk through concerns. We can kind of make a plan around it. So rather than waiting to actual school starting, don't be afraid to pick up the phone or send an email to your school. And he was saying to me that when children are settled, it just has such a benefit on the whole classroom, and it does obviously impact really positively on the learning, because if a child is unsettled, they're not going to be able to retain information. So he was really keen to say to parents, look, absolutely contact us and we will try and support the school. I suppose it's also just to say, and just a reminder, the Department of Education have really said that their priority is the focus on wellbeing for the first few weeks back. I know from speaking to a lot of parents, they're really worried about catching up on all the academic side. But that will come with time. I think the priority now is just getting people settled. Obviously, those informal chats between your teacher and yourself on the schoolyard, that won't be the same anymore. But you can still have your traditional writing a note in the homework notebook if it's a low-level issue, having a chat on the phone, or if you feel it really essential, you can request a meeting. Obviously, if you go to the school, you'll have to fill in the contact log and all that. But really, communication is really important. And I know that some schools now are looking at the tools they're using to communicate with parents, and perhaps investing in that to make sure parents feel heard at this time.
Okay. So yeah, so it's about encouraging parents to keep the communication open with their school.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a principal recently as well, and kind of asking, letting her know we were kind of doing these webinars, and if there was one thing, that advice that she gave, or what she'd like to put out to parents, is that it is very much, as you said, Sinead, the focus is very much going to be about just getting children back into school in the first place and really helping them settle back in. We know our children are quite resilient and they will bounce back really quickly. It's just about how we can support them with it. And we've talked through a lot of the things that you can do. They're just going to be worried about settling in, and the academic side of things and everything else will come down the line.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've talked a lot about how a parent can support a child. We've talked about strengthening their resilience, communicating clearly with your child and also with your child's school. We've talked about listening to your child and how we can do that. We've also given some top tips in relation to how it's important to seek and accept support, and how they can go about doing that as well. What we haven't talked about so far this evening is the importance of parents' own well-being. Can you give us some tips around this, Sinead?
Yeah, Siobhan, I guess this is a real passionate topic for me, because I can just see how life-changing it can be when parents and carers get a bit of time out to recharge and refresh and re-energize themselves. And I think parenting over the last few months, look, parenting in general, obviously can be hugely joyful and add so much to our lives. However, the reality is sometimes it can be really, really tough. And over the last few months, a lot of us as parents, as myself and Siobhan know, we've been without that extended support of family and grandparents and all that. So a lot of parents have been under pressure. A lot of parents have been working from home, which has been tough, which I've been calling parenting from work. If you don't have the childcare, it can be tough. So it's really important parents look after themselves. And I put this picture up of the mom on a plane. If you're on an airplane, the safety message is always look after yourself first and then your child. And another analogy is you can't fill from an empty cup. So if we're always giving, we need to make sure we have something for us. And I know I've spoken to a lot of parents about this, and some parents' initial reaction is, oh look, I give everything for my children and I feel it would be really selfish for me to take time out. But I always remind them that if you get a little bit of a break, you'll be so refreshed, you'll have more patience, more energy, and it's actually a gift to your children and a gift to your family. And I think also tonight we've been talking so much about building children's resilience. It's important that we lead by example and that they see us taking care of ourselves. I think it's important to acknowledge that parenting isn't always easy. It's okay to say you're having a tough day, a tough week. And to make sure that you have a circle of support around you. So you have trusted people that you can talk to if you ever need it. We often say to children in the ISPCC, talking makes you stronger, which is fantastic, but we need to be able to walk the walk, walk the talk the walk, sorry, as well.
Talk the talk.
Yeah. Physical well-being, again, with our children, we're always trying to make sure they're eating the right foods, getting enough sleep, drinking enough water. But sometimes when we come to us, we're the last to look after ourselves. So I think that's just really important. And we wouldn't drive our car around with no petrol. So again, we just need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to look after ourselves. And I suppose just a big thing that's come up over COVID is the whole social media. I had a lot of parents telling me that the whole homeschooling situation was quite stressful, and what was aggravating that was maybe that they were comparing themselves to other parents on WhatsApp. So you had some parents saying, "Oh, I'm doing Latin and needlework and geometry and physics with my child," and then you had other parents who were just trying to do everything to just do the basics. You know, it was a real struggle. So I think we have to be mindful and careful about screen time, and we put a lot of work as parents and thought into how much time children should be online and what content they are viewing. And I think we need to take on board that ourselves. And I think just be careful about Instagram, looking at these images of perfect families. You know, families don't, or parents don't broadcast when things are, you know, when they're up in the middle of the night with a sick baby or something. You know, they only broadcast the picture, postcard, perfect images. So just be mindful of that and try not to compare yourself with others, and just have healthy boundaries. The final note on that would be, and we've touched on this already, is the type of news and information that we're consuming. That sometimes we need to put a bit of a boundary around that. I know myself, when COVID kicked off, I was watching BBC News, Sky News, RT News. My husband is like, "What are you doing?" It was too much, and I was getting overwhelmed. So I needed to step back, because it just wasn't good for me, you know, being bombarded with that information. And the final point in terms of well-being is, if you'd like to do something for yourself, start off small, a small little steps in the right direction. So it's not about signing up for a marathon, but it could be going for a walk 3 times a week. I had one mum I worked with this year who started going for a walk, actually, and she hadn't done something for herself in, she said, about 17 years. And this has been life-changing for her. You know, she's getting out 3 or 4 times a week for small little walks, and she said it just gives her a break, and mentally she feels a lot better equipped to take care of her kids. And I had another parent this year, I remember, who said to me, "Oh, look, I'm not into exercise, I'm not into anything like that." And I just brainstormed with her, like, what would be nice for you? What's something small that might work? And she said, "You know what? There's a really scenic view near my house. I'm just going to get a cup of coffee. The kids will be looked after. I'm just going to drive there for half an hour." And she said to me, "Sinead, I just want silence for half an hour." So that was her kind of way around just getting a bit of a time out, refreshing herself, and being kind to herself.
And I think that just kind of sums it up, and it's really important. It's just, don't feel guilty to go and take that cup of coffee or to take that break.
Yeah.
If you're not able to look after yourself, you can't look after your child.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, we've had a lot of questions that you would have asked us already, so we're going to get to those in a moment. But just before we do get to them, what we would like to do is just remind you of the supports that are available to you and your child within the ISPCC. So we have a support line that we run every day from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Now, over the next 3 weeks, with school returning and opening, we've extended that support line from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock, Monday to Friday. If you feel you have some questions that maybe weren't answered here tonight, or you don't want to ask them in the chat section, that's absolutely okay. You can pick up the phone and give us a ring. We have somebody on the phones every day. It's our colleagues, it's myself and Sinead that run it. So we're professionally trained to deal with these calls and to answer any questions that you might have. So please do pick up the call and give us a ring. So that's the support line that we have for parents, and it's running for the next 3 weeks. The online support that we have is our Childline listening service. So we've got Childline.ie, where children and young people can access to talk online and have chats with their staff and volunteers. And also the text service as well is there for them. And we'll go into a little bit more detail about that tomorrow night as well in our webinar with the children tomorrow night and the parents. We also have the Parenting Hub on our ISPCC website. So that goes through lots of different topics around parenting that might be of interest to yourself. So it might be looking at parenting through the pandemic. It might be looking at how to cope with change, as we've discussed this evening. It might be that you might be looking at a child starting a preschool, questions that you might need to ask about creches and childcare. So there's lots of different topics. If you go on and take a look on the Parenting Hub on the ISPCC site, you'll get some support there as well. Just before we go into the questions there with Sinead, I'd just like to remind everybody tomorrow night is the second part of the webinar. It's absolutely fantastic to have had so many here tonight listening to us. It is one of our first ones, so we thank you for your support, and we really look forward to having you back here tomorrow night with your child. We will be giving out some, sorry Sinead, we will be sending out some feedback questionnaires after the 2 nights, so you'll probably get that in your email on Wednesday. As this is our first webinar, we'd really like to get feedback from yourself of how you felt it went and what you liked, any recommendations for us. We always like to hear from children, from families that we work with, how we can improve our services, what you'd like to see happen. Also, what we'd really love is maybe if you, is there any particular topics that you'd like us to talk more about? And we can look at developing content around that, which would be fantastic. So now what I'm going to do is just hand you over to Sinead to go through some of the questions that you have already asked of us, and hopefully we'll be able to answer as many as we can. And again, if not, or if it's not the answer that you're looking for, or you feel we'd like to go into it in more depth, the support line is there for everybody as well.
Thanks, Siobhan. Thank you. And just to say, there was a good few queries around social distancing and masks and those things. And you know, I suppose our expertise really is around emotional resilience and the emotional well-being of children. So I suppose it wouldn't be fair for us to comment too much on the COVID side, but I really recommend parents here tonight to just look up the government's rollback to return to school on gov.ie, because that gives an insight into the control measures that schools will put into place, the hand hygiene they're recommending, and also to contact your school directly, because every school will have a different type of building, different scenarios. So don't be afraid to contact your school for more information. So the first question we received was just from a mum whose son is going into junior infants for the first time, and he has been out of preschool obviously for the last few months, and she was just looking for assurance around him being able to cope with going to big school. So I suppose the first thing we have to say is, if for any new routine in life, we have to allow some time for children to get used to the new routine, and it may be a bit of an adjustment period for a few weeks, but they will get through it. And I suppose we have to role model again to our children that we know they'll be able to get through it, we know they'll be able to manage, and we just have to be careful that they're not picking up too much of our anxiety. For a lot of parents, your child going to big school for the first time can be a big change for us. So I think that, you know, we have to make sure that we have a bit of support around that too. I would also say to people is that, you know, try and focus on the positive. Ask your child, what are they looking forward to? What are the positive sides? You know, what did you like when you were in primary school? You know, we've touched briefly on screen time and sleep, you know, sleep time. And I know from talking to my clients, my children, they say to me that they realize that, you know, having a good night's sleep actually impacts their mood the next day. So I know over the last few months during the summer holidays, you know, routines can be a bit out of sync. So it's just maybe the next couple of weeks, just getting a nice routine going. Just some other advice around your junior infants going into school, you know, making sure that they know how to independently open their lunchbox, open their water. Shoelace is not recommended for very young children. Practice the hand washing, and just, you know, while parents won't be allowed in the school building, you need to rest assured that, you know, teachers are highly qualified and experienced, and they'll be doing everything they can to settle your child in. I know that some schools are doing virtual tours, so you can talk to your school directly about that. And I also advise parents here to look at the resources of the National Parents Council and the INTO as well. That could be very helpful. We had another question just from a mom who was saying that her child has dyslexia and was wondering would she receive resources normal. I mean, our understanding is that schools, special education teams will be doing everything they possibly can to cater for the needs of children, and they will be especially focused on children who may have anxiety and who may have concerns. Again, maybe a virtual tour or maybe doing a social story with your child might help them. And I also would direct that parent to the NEPS website. And just again to reassure that the Department of Education have stated that well-being is going to be the most important thing. We then had a lot of questions on the next topic, which is, what about if my child doesn't want to go back to school? And there could be many reasons for this. I know from talking to lots of parents, they've said that their child has really enjoyed that experience of having more quality time at home. So there's a bit of separation anxiety. Again, I think as parents, we need to acknowledge this is going to be an adjustment and a change for us, but it's about exploring our child. What have you liked in the past about school? Is there anything they're looking forward to? If it's not related to that, just haven't really been enjoyed being around you, it's about, exploring with them the other reasons why they might be reluctant and trying to find out what's going on. Is it something to do with the actual work in school, or is it a social, is there difficulties in the social side of things? So again, you're taking time to listen and explore. We had a question from a mom of a 6-year-old boy who's changing from junior infants into mainstream to a small autism spectrum unit in the same school. So I suppose what I would say is, again, contact the school. They may be able to give an online tour so that he can familiarize himself with his new classroom. Maybe if he knew the name of his new teachers, who else is going to be in the unit. And maybe look, for any of these questions, goes without saying, myself and Siobhan and my colleagues will be on the support line if you want further information. I'm just conscious of time, so that's why I'm sorry we're flying through these. We had another question about children being disappointed about missing out so much. So we had a mum saying that her son was really looking forward to join the GA team, but with COVID, he may miss out on this. There's a lot of disappointment. Children are disappointed about missing out. Again, I think all you can do is listen to your child, validate their feelings, acknowledge their feelings, and maybe if the GA team isn't possible, could you explore other sporting options or other after-school activities that they might be interested in? We had one teacher, I think, ask us challenging behaviours that teachers and parents may be faced with returning to school. Any suggestions on how to face and deal with them? So first of all, when I hear the term challenging behaviours, I always think to myself, okay, what message is the child's behaviour trying to communicate to us? Is there an unmet need? Is this child feeling safe and secure, or are they feeling unsafe? Are they feeling anxious and worried? So again, we need to find ways of allowing the child to express what's going on for them. And once we know what's going on for them, then we can do a joint support plan with them around that. There will be teething problems, there will be some separation anxiety. This is understandable. However, we need to remind ourselves what an amazing strength children have, and they have done really well so far. So I have a lot of belief in and faith in the children of Ireland. They will be okay. They just need a bit of time to adjust. Here's a question from mum whose daughter is transitioning to secondary school, but obviously they've missed out on those milestones in 6th class, haven't made the confirmation, all that. I think it's just to reassure you that secondary schools will be putting in extra efforts to orientate their child. Keep communication lines open with your school. Again, listen to your child. What are the concerns? And I recommend a really good website that was launched a few weeks ago called stepup.ie. the final question, how to motivate teenagers who may have to revert to online learning and don't feel they have attention span to remain focused, particularly 5th and 6th years. What I'd say to you is that when children are in the classroom, they have that extrinsic motivator of having other children around them, having their teacher there, and they don't have that same stimulus, same drive when they're at home remotely. So I think we just need to allow for that, and all we can do, you know, especially if they're older, these are older teenagers, is have that open dialogue. You know, if a decision is made down the line that some components are going online, how do they feel about it? Is there anything, you know, they feel you can do to help them with that? So I think, Sean, you might have had possibly other questions for us.
Yeah, sorry. First of all, thanks very much for that. Some really interesting stuff and really helpful stuff. A lot of comments coming in saying thanks very much for your time this evening. Some really informative stuff in there. A few questions just to kind of go through. Is there any advice that you might have for foster children or children in general who might have enjoyed the benefits of lockdown, as in being at home with their family and not having to worry about extra commitments, be it school or training or anything like that?
Yeah, and I suppose one thing we've heard from a lot of families is they've enjoyed the slower pace of life. So I think a lot of families and children realised how busy life was before lockdown, and it's forced them to slow down. So I think, again, it's about having an open conversation, you know, with this young person to say, look, you know, how are they feeling about going back? What's going to help them? What's going to support them through it? You know, maybe doing that scaling question from 1 to 10 and breaking it down into small baby steps to help them through that.
Okay, that's great.
And also, just on that as well, it's because they've been so used to being at home for so long and having that quality time together, it's to make sure to continue that and make sure that that's important. It's not a case that it's maybe every day, but maybe, you know, at the weekend that there is that time together, be it family time or that one-on-one time, but incorporate it into the new routine that we're going to have going forward as well.
That's great, thank you. What can a parent or a carer do if their child might be angry that they're not working from home, as in their job doesn't have the option for them to work from home? Is there any advice that you can give to a parent or carer in that situation?
Again, I think you need to explore underneath the anger. You know, is it that they're missing their mom or dad, that they're missing that quality time? And as Siobhan just said, maybe it's about, if that is the case, I'm not saying it is, it's about scheduling in quality one-to-one time. I'd be interested to know, you know, what's beneath the anger? What is the need there? What are they trying to say? And it's just finding maybe creative ways for allow them to express it so that they can cope and manage that.
Like, are they worried about their parent where they have to go to work? Obviously, we don't know where that is. And if so, it's again exploring those feelings with them, what's going on for them, what they're thinking, how you can support them to overcome them, reassure them in that way.
Okay, that's great, thank you. What can you do if your child hears negative things on the news, whether that's around COVID or return to school or exam results? And what can a parent or a carer do to talk to their child about negative things that they might hear on the news?
Yeah, look, as I said earlier, there's just a constant flow of information on news and Twitter and everything, and all we can do is just manage it as best we can. But if something does come up, which inevitably it will, it's again being there, slowing down to listen to them. What is their fears? What's their anxiety? Trying to make a plan around that. I think for very young children or very anxious children, you know, it's about trying as much as possible that they're not overly bombarded. So even though we gave some advice there about going back to school, the school will be giving them some instructions as well. So it's not to over bombard a child too much, but absolutely, you know, if they have a specific worry, you know, what is it? What, you know, and look, it's understandable, you know, it's okay for them to be having these feelings, very natural, very understandable.
Okay. So just a couple more. What can a youth worker or sports coach or someone like that do to support young people on their transition back to school, in particular those moving to secondary school?
I suppose what I'd say is that youth workers, coaches, they are often the one good adult. So it's about, reminding that young person you are there for them, you are there to listen to them on their good days and their bad days, that you are consistently in their helping hand. You're one of those 5 people who will listen to them no matter what, and just reassure them that you'll be consistently in their life, and that any topic you're open to hearing from them. Siobhan, I don't know, do you want to add anything there?
No, I'd agree with that. And it's actually just being there, listening to them, supporting them, validating their feelings around what's going on for them in that way. And I think if a child can identify a coach or someone like that in their life, that's fantastic as well.
That's great. Thanks very much. And one final question. It's about children who might have started in a new school right before lockdown hit. How can a parent or a carer support them, as they might be worried about the friendships they might have begun in their new school, and how they get those relationships back as we return?
Yeah, and actually I can relate to this, because I have a young person I'm working with at the moment in a similar situation, which had just started for a few days and then COVID happened. I think that in terms of the friendship side, if there's a worry about that, it's again, you could do a bit of role playing. Okay, so you're going to see Mary and Jane and Ava for the first time. What might you chat about? How can you show them that you're interested in them? And one thing that I do with a lot of children, because it can be a lot of pressure for a child to go, I have to make 5 new friends. So what I focus on is, how can you show your friendly skills? So how can you share? How can you be kind? So practicing those skills day by day, so you can help build a child's confidence around those things. And just really listen. And really, I think parents need to believe that they're the experts on their child. And sometimes it's just about slowing down and listening to them and having the confidence you will get through it.
And it's like there, as you said, Sinead, there as well, if they've just started before COVID happened, that they just started in the new classroom, it is to talk about exactly who's in the class, what it looked like, who was there, some of the familiarities, and maybe it's checking with the school that some of those kids are still there, or the familiarities are there, and you can start doing that now with your child. I'm just thinking of my not in school, but my 2.5-year-old returned to creche. Today was day 1 of week 3. And it was very much around kind of talking about what it was like beforehand and who was there. And he moved, new room, so it was completely new. It takes time, I suppose, is the point I'm trying to take. Today was the first day of week 3, and it was the first day he actually went in okay. And the big thing there was the attachment, just like our kids, the last 6 months they've been with us. It's about being, persistent and consistent with what you're doing. And as Sinead said, you are the expert of your own child. You know your child the best, so you know what to do and how to relate to them.
Okay, that's great. That's all the questions I have for you. Thanks very much for that.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Keep in touch with us, everyone. There's just information, our website, our Facebook, our Twitter, and our Instagram. And before we leave you go, just to say, on behalf of Siobhan and myself, thank you so much to our colleagues in communications, Adele, Sean, and Sarah, to Caroline, and to Aoife, and to everyone else who helped us create this webinar. We hope to see you tomorrow night for a follow-on and more detailed information. And just to leave you with the final note that, look, parenting isn't always easy. It's been a bizarre and sometimes stressful few months. And while parenting can be really rewarding at times and really joyful, just to go back to taking care of yourself, and just think about that oxygen mask going on you first. Children aren't looking for perfection. They're just looking for parents who are consistently there for them. And we've all been parenting through a pandemic, and we deserve a clap on the back for getting through it and surviving. So make sure you take care of yourself and be kind and gentle. Thank you.
Thanks.